The Crystal Bay Resort's grand lobby sparkled in the late afternoon sun, light dancing off the imported Italian marble floors and cascading crystal chandeliers. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the private beach, where palm trees swayed gently in the ocean breeze. The air was perfumed with fresh orchids, arranged artfully in hand-painted Chinese vases worth more than most cars. Plush velvet sofas in deep azure invited guests to linger, while attentive staff in crisp white uniforms moved discreetly among the wealthy clientele. A baby grand piano played softly in the corner, its notes floating through the rarefied air of this exclusive paradise. My family had gathered in their usual spot, the private lounge reserved for elite guests, where a bottle of Dom Perignon sat sweating in an ice bucket on their marble-top table. Mom wore her newest Chanel suit, pearls gleaming at her throat as she sipped champagne with an air of entitled satisfaction. My sister Rebecca adjusted her Cartier watch, deliberately letting it catch the light as she gestured dismissively in my direction. Uncle James and Aunt Patricia had joined them, both dressed for an afternoon of judging others while pretending to relax. I stood quietly in my simple black dress and flat shoes, letting their disapproving glances wash over me. If they only knew that every piece of furniture they lounged on, every bottle they ordered, every luxurious detail they used to dismiss me was chosen personally by me during the resort's recent $40 million renovation. The irony of them trying to kick me out of my own property almost made me smile. "Really, Emma, this is getting embarrassing," Rebecca announced, setting down her champagne flute with an expensive clink. "You can't keep hanging around here pretending you belong. We've been patient with your situation," Mom added, her voice dripping with false concern. "But this is an exclusive resort. There are standards to maintain." I took a small sip of water, thinking about the meeting I'd had just yesterday with the resort's management team about our record-breaking quarter. The property value had doubled since my quiet acquisition 3 years ago. "Perhaps a Holiday Inn would be more appropriate," Aunt Patricia suggested with a thin smile. "Or one of those budget chains with the free breakfast buffet." "The Hampton Inn is lovely this time of year," Uncle James chuckled, clearly pleased with his wit. "More your speed, wouldn't you say?" I watched a staff member discreetly straighten at the mention of my property's main competitor. The team's loyalty since I'd doubled their salaries and benefits was touching. "I appreciate your concern," I said calmly, checking my phone as a text from my property manager appeared. The new spa expansion plans needed my approval. "Concern?" Rebecca scoffed. "It's embarrassment. Do you know how it looks having you here in your Target clothes while we're entertaining important guests?" Mom nodded in agreement, fishing her keycard from her designer purse. "We've decided it's best if you find other accommodations. Here's your keycard. Please return it to the front desk on your way out." I slipped my phone back into my pocket, thinking about the irony of them trying to confiscate access to my own property. The weight of the master key in my jacket felt particularly satisfying at that moment. "When was the last time you could even afford the daily resort fee?" Uncle James pressed, signaling a waiter for another round of champagne. "This isn't some budget motel where you can scrape together enough for a night's stay." "I manage," I replied softly, watching the waiter's knowing look as he caught my eye. He'd been at the staff meeting yesterday where I'd announced their year-end bonuses. "Manage?" Aunt Patricia laughed sharply. "On your little secretary salary? Don't be ridiculous. This suite costs more per night than you make in a week." Rebecca leaned forward, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "Face reality, Emma. You're not in our league anymore. These rooms start at $2,000 a night. The annual membership fees alone would bankrupt you." I felt my phone vibrate again. Another message from the management team about the celebrity guest arriving next week. The presidential suite would need my final approval on the renovations. "The truth is," Mom said, sliding my keycard further away, "you're making everyone uncomfortable. The other guests notice your situation. It reflects poorly on the family. Perhaps the Motel 6 by the highway?" Uncle James suggested with a smirk. "I hear they leave the light on for you." The family erupted in laughter at his tired joke. I noticed more staff members glancing our way, their faces carefully neutral but their body language protective of their owner. "I should check on my arrangements," I said quietly, standing up as I saw the resort manager approaching with a concerned expression. Another text had come through. "The The property's value had just increased another 10% with the announcement of the new golf course acquisition. Yes, do that, Rebecca waved her hand dismissively. And don't come back until you can afford to belong here. We have a reputation to maintain. I gathered my simple handbag containing the property deed and latest financial reports showing the resort's record profits under my ownership. I'll handle the checkout process. See that you do, Mom said firmly. We can't have you embarrassing us anymore at this level of establishment. I've already informed the front desk to decline any future attempts at booking, Aunt Patricia added with satisfaction. This resort has standards. I was about to respond when I saw Marcus, my general manager, hurrying across the lobby with a distressed look. His tablet showed an alert about the Wilson family's increasingly hostile behavior toward the owner. Behind him, 2 security teams moved into position waiting for my signal. Ms. Williams, he called out loud enough for the entire lounge to hear. We have an urgent situation requiring the owner's immediate attention. Ms. Williams, Marcus repeated, his tablet displaying urgent alerts. We need the owner's approval for several matters. My family's laughter died abruptly. Mom's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips as Rebecca's perfectly manicured hand gripped the marble table. Uncle James straightened his tie nervously while Aunt Patricia's eyes darted between Marcus and me. There must be some mistake, Mom said smoothly, setting down her glass. Emma is our less fortunate family member. She was just leaving to find more suitable accommodations. The owner. Rebecca laughed, though her voice wavered slightly. She can barely afford the parking fees. Perhaps you're looking for someone else. Marcus glanced at me for permission to continue. I nodded slightly, watching my family's growing confusion as they tried to maintain their aristocratic composure while processing why the resort's general manager was deferring to me. Ms. Williams, your acquisition of Crystal Bay Resort for $58.7 million 3 years ago has proven quite profitable, Marcus continued, pulling up financial reports on his tablet. Property value has increased 127% under your ownership. Mom's face went pale. That's impossible. Emma works as a secretary. Actually, I said quietly, accepting the tablet from Marcus, I'm the owner of Williams Property Holdings. Crystal Bay Resort is one of our flagship properties. This is absurd, Uncle James sputtered, but his voice trailed off as Marcus produced the property deed with my signature. That's a $60 million property. $132 million after recent improvements, I corrected gently. The new golf course acquisition pushed total value past $150 million this morning. Rebecca's hand shook as she reached for her champagne. But you said you could barely afford the room fees. I never said that, I replied. You did. I simply didn't correct your assumptions. Marcus pulled up another document. Ms. Williams also owns the Heritage Hotel Group, which includes the downtown Marriott where your law firm leases office space, Mr. James. Uncle James choked on his drink. You're my landlord? Along with the Madison Avenue building housing your medical practice, Aunt Patricia, I added. All part of our $300 million commercial property portfolio. Aunt Patricia's face cycled through several shades of gray. The lease renewal next month will be handled by my management team, I confirmed. Though recent tenant behavior may factor into decisions. Mom's hands trembled as she reached for her key card, the one she tried to confiscate from me. Emma, darling, we were just... Ms. Williams, Marcus interrupted, shall I inform the wedding planning team about Mrs. Rebecca Wilson's event next month? As owner, you'll need to approve the extended family discount she requested. Rebecca's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. My wedding venue is one of my properties, yes, I said. Along with the restaurant for the rehearsal dinner and the hotel block you've reserved for guests. The country club too, Marcus added, scrolling through his tablet. Ms. Williams acquired it last year. Your membership renewals are actually pending her approval. Uncle James loosened his tie, sweat beading on his forehead. The golf club membership. All 3 country clubs actually, I clarified. Plus the marina where your boats are docked, the storage facility holding your summer home's furniture, and the shopping center containing your favorite boutiques. Good Lord, Aunt Patricia whispered, gripping her pearls. The medical building lease. Your entire real estate portfolio is quite impressive, Marcus continued professionally. The Williams Property Holdings Group now controls over $2.8 billion in luxury venues, hotels, office buildings and retail spaces across the region. Mom's perfectly maintained composure cracked entirely. Everything all our favorite places. Ms. Williams, the head of security, approached respectfully. Shall we implement the access changes you discussed? Rebecca's face crumpled as realization hit. The wedding venue, the hotel blocks, everything we've booked. And your current accommodations, Marcus added. The presidential suite you're occupying, Mrs. Wilson, is actually Ms. Williams' private residence floor. We've been staying in your rooms? Mom whispered, horror dawning on her face. The entire top floor is my private property, yes, I confirmed. I've been allowing family use as a courtesy. The resort's legal team approached with documents. Ms. Williams, regarding the family membership access protocols you wanted to revise. Uncle James grabbed his wallet, pulling out credit cards. Now, Emma, let's be reasonable about this. The family discount structure is under review, I said calmly, along with all legacy membership agreements. Review. Aunt Patricia's voice cracked. But my practice is lease. All family-related contracts, bookings and membership privileges are being reassessed, Marcus explained professionally. Ms. Williams has final authority over all property access and rates. Rebecca's wedding planner hurried over with a concerned expression. Ms. Williams, about the venue contract. My sister burst into tears, mascara running. Emily's, my wedding, all the deposits. The owner will need to review all family-related bookings, Marcus stated firmly. Given recent behavioral concerns. Mom reached for my arm desperately. Darling, we had no idea. All this time. Ms. Williams, the property management team called out. The full portfolio report is ready for your review. Would you like us to begin implementing the new family usage policies immediately? I checked my watch calmly, letting the weight of their situation sink in. Every property they depended on, every venue they frequented, every space they used to demonstrate their supposed superiority, all under my quiet control. Schedule a meeting for tomorrow, I said finally. We'll need to discuss new terms for family property access. The color drained from their faces as they realized their comfortable lives quite literally rested in my hands. The same hands they'd just finished calling too poor to belong in their world. The staff will help you check out, I added quietly. We'll discuss future accommodation arrangements tomorrow. The next morning, I sat in my private conference room overlooking the ocean, reviewing property reports while my family fidgeted nervously in their seats. The sleek boardroom table cost more than their annual country club dues. Not that they'd be enjoying member rates anymore. As owner of Williams Property Holdings, I began calmly, I need to address some concerning tenant behavior. The irony of their current anxious deference compared to yesterday's dismissal wasn't lost on me. Every property they depended on, their homes, offices, social venues, all required my signature for continued access. Of course, Ms. Williams, Mom stammered, her usual imperious tone replaced by something approaching respect. We deeply regret any misunderstandings about your financial status. I reviewed their files on my tablet. 3 luxury condos, 5 commercial leases, 12 club memberships and 26 venue booking contracts. All contingent on my approval. Yesterday they'd called me too poor to belong in their world. Today they realized I controlled their entire world. Mom, I addressed her directly, regarding your penthouse apartment lease. Your comments about my inability to afford basic accommodations were particularly interesting, given that I've been subsidizing your rent by 60% below market rate. She paled visibly. Darling, I was just concerned about I didn't realize. Current market rate for your unit is $12,000 monthly, I continued professionally. Your subsidized rate of $4,800 was a family courtesy. Starting next month, you'll pay standard rates plus a 10% premium for hostile tenant behavior. But that's triple our current rent, she whispered, gripping her designer purse. We can't possibly. Perhaps you should find somewhere in your budget, I replied mildly, echoing her words from yesterday. I hear the Hampton Inn is lovely this time of year. Dad cleared his throat nervously. Now, Emma, about my law firm's office lease. Yes, the Madison Avenue building. I consulted my notes. You suggested I stick to budget motels while occupying prime commercial real estate at 40% below market rate. That preferential pricing is also under review. But our practice depends on that location, he protested weakly. Moving would destroy our client base. The new rate will be $175 per square foot, standard for the area, I stated. Plus appropriate penalties for tenant harassment of the owner. The lease addendum is being drafted now. Rebecca dabbed at her tears, smearing expensive mascara. Please. My wedding venue. Ah yes, the Crystal Bay Resort booking. I pulled up her contract. You told me to find somewhere in my budget, while requesting $50,000 in family discounts for your event. That's an interesting approach to tenant-owner relations. I didn't know, she wailed. Please don't cancel my wedding. The venue is available at standard luxury rates, I said calmly. Plus a 20% premium for past behavioral issues. The same applies to all related bookings, rehearsal dinner, guest accommodations, spa services. That would bankrupt us, she whispered. Financial concerns can be difficult, I acknowledged. Perhaps the Motel 6 would better suit your budget? I hear they leave the light on. Uncle James wiped sweat from his forehead. About the country club memberships. All family membership privileges are suspended pending review, I confirmed. Your suggestion that I couldn't afford the fees while benefiting from owner-subsidized access was noteworthy. But the summer gala, Aunt Patricia began, has been moved to my new rooftop venue, I finished. Standard rates apply, $75,000 minimum for non-preferred clients. They sat in stunned silence, finally understanding their complete dependence on my property empire. Every aspect of their luxurious lifestyle existed at my discretion. However, I continued, I'm prepared to offer new terms for family property access, conditional on significant behavioral changes. They leaned forward desperately. Anything, Mom promised. First, all family leases will be revised to market rate plus 10%. This brings your payments in line with your stated beliefs about appropriate spending levels. Dad started to protest but stopped at Mom's warning look. Second, venue and club access will be restored gradually with behavioral probation periods. Any further dismissive comments will result in immediate termination of all property privileges. Rebecca nodded frantically, clutching her wedding planner. Third, all family members will attend monthly property management meetings to understand the business you dismissed as my little hobby. Your continued access depends on demonstrating respect for both the owner and the enterprise. Of course, Uncle James agreed quickly. We'd be honored to learn about your business empire. Finally, I picked up a stack of contracts. You'll sign updated agreements acknowledging that all family property access exists purely at the owner's discretion. Your housing security depends on maintaining appropriate tenant behavior. They signed without hesitation, their hands shaking slightly as they formalized their new status as standard tenants rather than entitled family members. Ms. Williams, Marcus entered with new reports. The Shanghai hotel acquisition is complete. Total portfolio value just exceeded $3 billion. I nodded, watching my family's eyes widen at the casual mention of my growing empire. Schedule the property integration meeting for next week. And send the updated lease terms to all family tenants. Yes, ma'am. Also, the New York Times would like to interview you about becoming the youngest female billionaire in luxury property development. Mom's grip on her purse tightened as she realized just how thoroughly they'd misjudged my financial situation. One last thing, I said, standing to end the meeting. I expect full attendance at next month's property management review. We'll be discussing appropriate tenant-owner relationships and the true cost of dismissing people as too poor to belong in your world. They filed out quietly, their usual arrogance replaced by the humble demeanor of tenants who finally understood their place in the property hierarchy. Through the window, I watched them hurry across the lobby that yesterday they tried to ban me from entering. My phone buzzed with another acquisition alert. The retail complex housing their favorite luxury boutiques was now under contract. I smiled slightly, thinking about next month's lease renewals. Sometimes the best property management lessons came from experiencing life on the other side of the financial dismissal they'd so enjoyed delivering. Ms. Williams, Marcus appeared with more contracts. Shall I implement the new family tenant policies immediately? Yes, I confirmed, watching my family's cars pull away from the resort they now knew belonged to the daughter they'd dismissed. It's time they learned the true value of property respect.
Surprise, just sold the lake house to Amanda's dad for $500,000. Don't worry about the paperwork, I signed for both of us. You never cared about that place anyway. I stared at the message from Michael, my coffee sitting untouched on the desk as I tried to process what he'd done. He'd attached a photo, him grinning in front of my lake house, his arm around a young blonde woman who looked barely 25. My name is Olivia Parker. I'm 38 years old, and today I found out that my husband of 15 years not only has a much younger girlfriend, but also tried to sell my family's lake house to her father. That house had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather built it in 1962, and I spent every summer there growing up. When my parents died 5 years ago, they left it to me, only me. I took a sip of coffee. Strangely, I felt calm. A couple months ago, this would have wrecked me. But that was before I found lipstick-stained receipts in Michael's coat. Before I noticed money missing from our joint account. Before I hired a private investigator who confirmed everything I feared. Another text came in. Amanda's dad already sent the money. We're thinking of remodeling, maybe adding a pool. Time to bring some youth to the place. I couldn't help but smile a little. Michael was always full of himself. But this? Trying to sell property that wasn't his, that was a new level. Then a message from a number I didn't know. Hi Olivia, it's Amanda. Just wanted to thank you for being so cool about the house. Daddy's super excited to make it our new vacation spot. Michael says you never use it anyway. I saved her number and didn't reply. Instead, I called Thomas Morgan, our family lawyer. Olivia, he answered right away. I was just about to call. I got some odd documents about the lake house. Let me guess, I said, leaning back. A forged signature trying to transfer ownership. Exactly, and not a very good one either. Your husband's no expert in faking signatures. I heard papers rustling on his end. The interesting part, he added, is that Amanda's dad already wired $500,000 into Michael's personal account. $500,000? I asked, already knowing the number. Yes, and since Michael had no right to sell the house and this clearly counts as fraud. He trailed off. What can we do? Well, Thomas said with a hint of amusement, we can tell Amanda's dad right now and start legal action against Michael. Or, I asked. We could wait until they submit the transfer paperwork to the county and let them figure out they've been scammed. Sometimes people learn best when reality hits. I thought of Michael's smug texts, Amanda's clueless message, and all the nights I'd wondered why he'd been so distant. Let's wait, I said. How long do we have? With that amount of money, they'll likely file in the next few days. I looked at a photo on my desk, Michael and I last summer at the lake house. He was smiling, but now it looked fake. Was he already planning this then? Keep me updated, I told Thomas. Thanks. After hanging up, I finally replied to Michael. Congrats on the sale. Hope everything turns out just the way you deserve. He texted right back. Glad you're finally being reasonable. I'll send someone to pack your stuff. I looked around my office at everything I'd built for myself while Michael plotted behind my back. The lake house wasn't just a place, it was history, family, love. And the fact he thought he could just sell it like it meant nothing said everything about who he really was. Another text buzzed in. Michael says we should throw a housewarming party after the reno. You're totally welcome to come if you want. I put the phone down without replying. Let them have their party. Let them plan. The real surprise was coming, and this time, I'd be the one watching it unfold. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. I'd had this office view for 10 years, ever since I started my own practice. Michael once called it a waste of money, said my clients didn't care about the view. But I cared, just like I cared about the lake house, about family, about respect. My phone lit up with a message from Thomas. They just submitted the paperwork to the county. Should take about 48 hours. I smiled as the sunset painted the sky in warm colors. In 2 days, Michael would realize what he'd really done. And I'd be right here, watching everything fall apart. For him. Because sometimes the best revenge is just letting people deal with the mess they made. 2 days passed at an agonizingly slow pace. I kept my phone close, waiting for the inevitable explosion that would come when Michael discovered his mistake. Each hour brought new messages from him and Amanda, filled with renovation plans and thinly veiled jabs about updating the old place. The call came at 3:47 p.m. "What the hell is this?" Michael's voice crackled through my speaker. All pretense of civility gone. "The county just rejected the transfer. They're saying I had no right to sell the property." I settled into my office chair, enjoying the panic in his voice. "Oh, that's strange. Did they say why?" "Don't play dumb, Olivia. They said the house is solely in your name." "That's impossible. We're married. Everything is joint property." I could hear Amanda in the background, her voice high and worried, asking what was wrong. "Not everything, Michael. The lake house was inherited from my parents. It was never in your name." "You knew," he accused. "You knew and you let me sell it anyway." "Correction. I let you try to sell it. There's a difference." I kept my voice calm, professional. "By the way, how's Mr. Anderson taking the news?" The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "He's threatening legal action. Says if he doesn't get his money back immediately, he's going to the police." "Well, that's unfortunate," I replied. "Especially since you've already spent some of that money, haven't you?" Another pause. I could almost see him pacing, running his hands through his graying hair the way he did when things spiraled out of his control. "How did you know that?" "The same way I know about the apartment you leased for Amanda 3 months ago, and the jewelry you bought her, and the weekend trips to Miami. I let each revelation land like a hammer blow. I'm not as oblivious as you thought, Michael. You had me followed." His indignation would have been amusing if it weren't so hypocritical. "Let's call it due diligence. Now, I assume Mr. Anderson will want his $500,000 back rather quickly." "I don't," he started, then stopped. "I can't pay it all back right now." In the background, I heard Amanda's voice rise in pitch. "What do you mean you can't pay it back? Daddy's going to be furious." I waited, letting them argue for a moment before speaking again. "You know, fraud charges are serious, Michael. Forging signatures, selling property you don't own. That could mean jail time." "You wouldn't," he said, his voice wavered. "I wouldn't have to do anything. Mr. Anderson seems perfectly capable of handling that himself." The sound of a door slamming came through the phone, followed by Amanda's voice growing distant, calling for her father. Michael's breathing had grown heavy, panicked. "Olivia, please, we can work something out. I'll move out, give you whatever you want in the divorce. Just help me fix this." I thought about all the times I'd caught him in small lies over the years, how he'd always managed to talk his way out of them. Not this time. "You know what's interesting?" I said, keeping my tone conversational. "When you were so busy planning your new life, you forgot to check whose name was on the deed. Just like you forgot to check whose name was on the investment account you used for Amanda's apartment." "What are you talking about?" "The account you emptied last month. It was in my name too. Every withdrawal, every transfer, it's all documented. Mr. Anderson might be interested in seeing those records." "You're bluffing," he said, but I could hear the fear creeping into his voice. "Am I? Check your email. I just sent you copies of everything. Bank statements, transfer records, even some interesting text messages between you and Amanda from 6 months ago. I'm sure her father would find those enlightening." The sharp intake of breath told me he was reading them now. "How did you get copies?" "Let's just say I learned from your mistakes, Michael. I learned to document everything." The sound of another door opening came through the phone, followed by a man's angry voice. "Mr. Anderson, I assumed." Michael's next words came in a rush. "I have to go. We're not done talking about this." "Actually," I said, "I think we are. Good luck with Mr. Anderson. I hear he has an excellent lawyer." I hung up and leaned back in my chair, feeling lighter than I had in months. Through my office window, I could see storm clouds gathering on the horizon, appropriate weather for the storm Michael had just walked into. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Mr. Anderson's lawyer just called. They're pursuing criminal charges unless full restitution is made immediately." I smiled, typing back, "Keep me updated. I have a feeling things are about to get very interesting." Looking at the family photo on my desk, taken at the lake house last summer, I finally saw what I should have noticed months ago. While Michael was looking at the camera, his smile forced and distant, I was looking at the horizon, already moving toward a future that didn't include him. The fallout was swifter and more devastating than even I had anticipated. By evening, Mr. Anderson had marched into the police station, files in hand, ready to press charges. Michael's desperate calls kept coming, each one more panicked than the last. "Please, Olivia," he begged during his sixth call. "Anderson's serious about pressing charges. I could go to jail." I sat on the lake house dock, my feet dangling over the water, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold. "That's generally what happens when you commit fraud, Michael." "I'll do anything," he said. "I'll give you full ownership of everything in the divorce. Just help me fix this." I couldn't help but laugh. "Full ownership? Of what exactly?" "The house you tried to sell is already mine. The investment account you drained was in my name. What exactly are you offering?" His silence spoke volumes. "That's what I thought," I continued. "By the way, Amanda stopped by earlier." "What?" The panic in his voice rose. "Why?" "To apologize, actually. Seems her father showed her all the evidence, including those texts where you promised to leave me 6 months ago. She was quite shocked to learn you'd been lying to her too." The truth had hit Amanda hard. She'd arrived at the lake house in tears, mascara streaking down her face. "He told me you were separated," she'd sobbed. "He said you were just staying together for appearances." I'd made her tea, let her cry it out. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people see the truth for themselves. "Amanda's gone." Michael's voice cracked. "Back to her father's house. She mentioned something about focusing on her career instead of lying older men." Her words, not mine. The sound of something breaking came through the phone, followed by muffled cursing. "Mr. Anderson's lawyer called," I said conversationally. "They're willing to drop the criminal charges if you repay the full amount within 48 hours. Generous of them, don't you think?" "You know I can't get that kind of money that quickly." "Actually, you can. Sell your beloved boat. Liquidate your retirement account. Sell those ridiculous collector cars you bought last year. It might be just enough." Another crash, followed by heavy breathing. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "No, Michael, I'm not enjoying it. I'm just finally seeing you clearly." I ended the call and looked out over the lake. The water was calm, reflecting the evening sky like a mirror. My grandfather used to say still waters run deep, meaning the quietest people often have the most powerful thoughts. He would have appreciated how this played out. Over the next week, I watched through my lawyer as Michael scrambled to gather the money. He sold his prized possessions, emptied his accounts, even borrowed from friends. In the end, he managed to repay Mr. Anderson just hours before the deadline. The divorce proceedings were remarkably straightforward. Michael, humbled and exhausted, didn't contest anything. He signed the papers without argument, giving me everything I asked for, not that there was much left to give. The last time I saw him was at the courthouse. He looked older, defeated, his designer clothes replaced by off-the-rack basics. "I never meant for it to go this far," he said quietly. "You never meant to get caught." I corrected him. "There's a difference." He nodded, shoulders slumping. "The lake house, it really was beautiful. I should have appreciated it more." "You should have appreciated a lot of things more, Michael." As he turned to leave, he paused. "What will you do now?" I smiled, thinking of the renovation plans I'd already drawn up for the lake house. Not to modernize it, but to restore it to its original glory, the way my grandfather had built it. "I'm going to keep building the life I deserve," I said. "And this time, I'm doing it my way." The following weekend, I hosted a family reunion at the lake house. Cousins, aunts, uncles, all the people Michael had gradually pushed away over the years. We shared stories about my grandfather building the place, about summers spent swimming and fishing, about the legacy that had almost been lost. Standing on the dock that evening, watching the kids play in the water while the adults gathered on the porch, I felt a profound sense of peace. The house was full of laughter again, full of life and love, the way it was always meant to be. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Final divorce papers are filed. It's officially over." I looked out over the lake, at the future stretching before me like the endless horizon. "No," I thought, "it's just beginning." Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting free. Free to live authentically, free to honor your legacy, and free to build something better from the ashes of betrayal. The lake house stands as a testament to that truth. Not just a house, but a home. Not just a property, but a legacy. And not just a victory, but a new beginning. She can't even walk, Your Honor. How can she possibly raise a child? My mother-in-law's voice echoed through the courtroom, each word cutting deeper than the last. Look at her, bound to that wheelchair. My granddaughter deserves better. I sat there, my hands gripping my wheelchair's armrests so tightly my knuckles turned white. Beside me, my husband Thomas squeezed my shoulder, his touch grounding me as Margaret, his mother, continued her theatrical performance. My name is Olivia Chen Martinez, and at 32, I found myself fighting to keep custody of my own daughter because my mother-in-law decided my disability made me an unfit mother. Mrs. Martinez, the judge interrupted, her voice sharp. Are you suggesting that people with disabilities are incapable of parenting? Margaret straightened her designer blazer, her perfectly manicured hand gesturing dramatically toward me. I'm saying my 8-year-old granddaughter needs someone who can keep up with her. Emma's a talented athlete. She needs guidance, physical support. How can someone who can't even stand provide that? I thought about Emma, our brilliant daughter, probably sitting in the hallway with my sister, trying to understand why her grandmother was trying to take her away from me. The same grandmother who'd been undermining my parenting since the day Emma was born. Your Honor, my lawyer started, but I touched her arm, signaling I wanted to speak. May I address the court? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. The judge nodded, and I wheeled myself forward. Years of navigating both physical and social barriers had taught me when to fight and how to do it effectively. This was one of those moments. I've been in this wheelchair since I was 16. I began, meeting Margaret's cold stare. A car accident took my ability to walk, but it gave me something else. Determination. I graduated top of my class in physical therapy, met my husband, and built a life that I'm proud of. When Emma was born, yes, I had to adapt. But that's what parents do, wheelchair or not. I pulled out my phone, pulling up a video I'd been saving for this moment. This is from last weekend's swim meet, I said, holding it up. The screen showed Emma diving into the pool, her strokes powerful and precise. I might not be able to swim with her, but I've never missed a practice. I'm the one who drives her to training at 5 a.m., the one who helps her with her technique from the poolside. The video switched to Emma climbing out of the pool, rushing to where I sat in my wheelchair. Mom, did you see? I beat my personal best. Her joy was contagious, her wet arms thrown around me without hesitation. The thing about being a parent with a disability, I continued, my voice growing stronger, is that you learn to focus on what you can do, not what you can't. I might not be able to run alongside Emma, but I've taught her something more valuable, that different doesn't mean less capable. Margaret scoffed, but I noticed her confidence wavering. She needs a normal mother, she insisted, but her voice had lost some of its conviction. Normal? Thomas finally spoke up, his quiet voice carrying across the courtroom. Mom, Olivia's not just a good mother, she's an extraordinary one. Emma's thriving, she's confident, compassionate, and determined, just like her mom. If you'd stop trying to tear our family apart, you might actually see that. The judge leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. Mrs. Chen Martinez, how does Emma feel about your disability? I smiled, remembering a conversation from just last week. She told her class during show and tell that her mom has superpowers, that my wheelchair is like a rocket ship, and that I taught her that obstacles are just opportunities to be creative. This is absurd, Margaret interrupted. She's manipulating everyone. Emma needs her mother, the judge cut in firmly. And from what I've seen, she has an excellent one. She turned to address Margaret directly. Mrs. Martinez, your petition for custody is denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering you to attend sensitivity training regarding disabilities and family dynamics. The relief that flooded through me was overwhelming. Thomas wrapped his arm around my shoulders, and I could feel him trembling slightly. This isn't over, Margaret hissed as she gathered her designer purse. Emma deserves better. But it was over, at least this battle. As we left the courtroom, Emma ran toward us, her dark ponytail bouncing. Mom, Dad, she launched herself into my lap, her favorite spot since she was tiny. Can we get ice cream? I hugged her close, breathing in the familiar scent of chlorine and strawberry shampoo. Ice cream sounds perfect, champion. Looking at my daughter's smiling face, I knew Margaret was wrong. Emma didn't need a normal mother. She needed exactly what she had. A mother who could teach her that limitations are only barriers if you let them be. That different can be extraordinary, and that love doesn't require legs to stand on. What I didn't know then was that this was just the beginning of our story. Emma's determination, sparked by watching her wheelchair-bound mother navigate life with grace and grit, would lead her down a path none of us expected, not even Margaret with all her prejudices and plans. But that day, as we headed for ice cream, our little family unit intact and stronger for having weathered this storm, I felt nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for my supportive husband, our amazing daughter, and yes, even for my wheelchair, because it had taught me that sometimes the biggest victories come after the hardest fights. But that day, as we headed for ice cream, our little family unit intact and stronger for having weathered this storm, I felt nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for my supportive husband, our amazing daughter, and yes, even for my wheelchair, because it had taught me that sometimes the biggest victories come after the hardest fights. 7 years flew by in a whirlwind of chlorine-scented mornings and endless laps. Emma, now 15, had transformed from a promising swimmer into something extraordinary, but life had other plans for us. It happened during a routine training session. One moment Emma was gliding through the water, her strokes powerful and precise. The next she was clutching her leg, her face contorted in pain. "Mom," her cry echoed across the pool. I wheeled myself closer as the coach helped her out of the water. "I can't feel my legs properly." The diagnosis came like a thunderbolt. Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare disorder where the body's immune system attacks the nerves. The doctors said it was caught early, but Emma would need intensive therapy. There was a chance she might not swim competitively again. Margaret, of course, couldn't resist weighing in. "This is what happens when you let someone in a wheelchair raise a child," she spat during one of her uninvited hospital visits. "She probably inherited your weakness." I was about to respond when Emma's voice cut through the room, sharp and clear. "Grandma, stop. Mom's not weak. She's the strongest person I know." Margaret's face reddened. "Darling, I'm just saying." "You're just being cruel," Emma interrupted. "Mom taught me that disabilities don't define us, and now I get to prove it, just like she does every day." I watched my daughter, my heart swelling with pride. Even lying in a hospital bed, uncertain if she'd walk properly again, she showed more strength than Margaret had ever understood. The next few months were a battle of determination versus despair. Emma approached her physical therapy with the same intensity she'd given to swimming. I recognized the fire in her eyes. It was the same one I'd had after my accident. "Mom," she said one evening during a particularly tough session, "I want to try something different." She showed me a video on her phone. Paralympic swimming. Athletes with various disabilities cutting through the water with incredible speed and grace. "If I can't compete in regular competitions anymore," she continued, her eyes shining, "maybe I can find a new way to chase my dreams." That's when I saw it, the moment my daughter transformed her challenge into an opportunity. Just as I had done years ago, she was refusing to let circumstances define her limits. The journey wasn't easy. Some days, Emma could barely stand. Other days, she pushed too hard and ended up in tears of frustration. But she never quit. "You know what's funny, Mom?" she said during one of our late-night talks. "All those years watching you navigate the world from your wheelchair, you were actually teaching me how to adapt, how to find different ways to achieve my goals." Thomas supported us completely, attending every therapy session he could. Even some of Margaret's flying monkeys, her equally judgmental friends, had to admit that our family unit was stronger than ever. 1 year after her diagnosis, Emma entered her first Paralympic qualifying event. Her times weren't her personal best from before the syndrome, but they were impressive for her new category. Margaret showed up unexpectedly at the competition. "I came to support her," she said stiffly, avoiding my eyes. Despite everything, she's still my granddaughter. I watched as Emma took her position at the starting block. Her legs weren't as strong as they used to be, but her spirit was unshakable. When the whistle blew, she dove in with the same grace she'd always possessed. The crowd erupted as Emma touched the wall first. As she pulled herself out of the pool, her legs shaking but her smile radiant, I saw Margaret's expression change. It wasn't quite acceptance, but perhaps it was the beginning of understanding. "She swims like you used to," Margaret said quietly, surprising me. It was the first time she ever acknowledged my pre-accident life. No, I replied, watching Emma wave to us from the podium. She swims like herself. That's always been enough. Later that evening, as we celebrated Emma's victory, she hugged me tightly. Thanks, Mom. For what, sweetheart? For showing me that sometimes life's biggest challenges become our greatest strengths. I looked at my daughter, now standing on slightly wobbly legs but with her head held high, and realized that sometimes our greatest achievements aren't in spite of our challenges, but because of them. Emma hadn't just adapted to her new reality. She'd embraced it, transformed it, and was using it to inspire others. As I watched her show her medal to Thomas, I couldn't help but think about how far we'd come from that day in the courtroom when Margaret tried to tear us apart. My daughter wasn't just surviving. She was thriving, turning what some might see as a tragedy into a triumph. And this was just the beginning of her journey. 3 years later, I was sitting in the stands at the Paralympic Games, my heart beating fast as Emma stepped up to the pool. Bright stadium lights made the water sparkle like gold. Thomas held my hand tightly, and to my surprise, Margaret sat beside us, holding a handmade sign that said, "Go Emma." At 18, our daughter was more than just a swimmer. She was a symbol of strength. Her journey from a competitive swimmer to a Paralympian had inspired many people facing their own struggles. The announcer's voice echoed through the stadium. In lane 4, representing the United States, Emma Chen Martinez. As the swimmers got ready, I saw something unexpected. Margaret was crying. I was so wrong, she whispered, her voice shaking. About everything. The starting buzzer sounded, and Emma dove into the water. Her swimming style had changed to match her new abilities, but it was still beautiful. Every movement was strong and full of purpose. The crowd cheered as the swimmers neared the final turn. Emma was tied with a champion from Australia. In that moment, I thought of every early morning practice, every therapy session, every tear and small victory that led to this point. "Come on, Emma," Margaret shouted, surprising all of us. She stood up, waving her sign. "Show them what you can do." Emma touched the wall. We held our breath as the results came up. CHN Martinez, first. NEUPARALYMPICRETOR. Thomas jumped up and lifted me from my wheelchair in joy, spinning me around. Even Margaret was cheering and hugging everyone. After the medal ceremony, Emma came over, her gold medal shining. She hugged each of us, then stopped in front of Margaret. "Grandma," she said gently, "this medal isn't just about swimming. It's about learning that different doesn't mean less. Mom taught me that. Now I want to teach others." Margaret held Emma's hands, tears falling. "I was wrong about so much," she said. "Your mother, she didn't just raise you. She raised you to be amazing." That night, at a small family celebration in our hotel, Margaret pulled me aside. "Olivia," she said, her voice full of emotion, "I want to say sorry, not just for today, but for everything. Watching Emma in that pool helped me finally understand what you've been showing us all along. Real strength comes in many forms." I looked at her, not as someone who had judged me, but as someone who had finally changed. "Thank you," I said softly. "That means a lot." Emma's win didn't just change our family. She started speaking at schools, telling her story of hope and strength. At every event, she talked about where it all began, with a mother in a wheelchair who showed her that challenges could be overcome in new ways. One afternoon, about a month later, Emma came home and saw Margaret helping me make dinner, something we never imagined years ago. "Mom," Emma said, eyes shining, "I've been asked to coach young swimmers with disabilities. They want me to help start a Paralympic training program." I looked at my daughter, standing proudly despite her unsteady legs, and felt so proud. She hadn't just overcome her struggles, she was helping others do the same. Margaret smiled as she chopped vegetables. "You know, Emma, you got that from your mom. Turning hard things into something that helps others." Emma hugged us both. I had great teachers. All of you. As I watched my family, Thomas coming home from work, Emma showing Margaret her coaching plans, I realized that life's biggest victories often look different than we expect. Margaret once saw my wheelchair as a weakness, but it helped teach Emma the most important lesson. Real strength isn't about what you can or can't do. It's about how you face the hard times. And as Emma started this new chapter, guiding other athletes to believe in themselves, I knew our story was never about proving Margaret wrong. It was about proving that love, courage, and acceptance can turn any challenge into something truly extraordinary. "You don't belong in this family," Margaret yelled as she threw my handmade birthday gift for my husband into the trash. "My son could have married someone rich, someone important, but instead he chose you, a nobody." I stood in her spotless kitchen, my hands shaking but my voice firm. "I love James, and he loves me. That should be enough. My name is Isabella Martinez. I was 29 and had been married to James for 3 years. But his mother still looked down on me. No matter what I did, being a teacher, learning their family traditions, or just trying to be kind, it was never enough. She especially hated that I came from a hard-working Mexican immigrant family." Margaret crossed her arms. "Love isn't enough. This family has standards. You'll never truly be one of us." Then she picked up the glass angel I had made for James and dropped it into the garbage disposal. The sharp sound of it breaking made my heart ache, but I refused to cry. "Next week is our family portrait," she said coldly. "Try to wear something decent this time." Before I could answer, my little nephew Tommy ran in. "Auntie Bella, can we play trucks?" His bright smile broke the tension. "Of course, Mio," I said, smiling back. Margaret frowned at my use of Spanish, but Tommy didn't notice. Just then, James walked in. He glanced at the broken glass, then at his mother's stiff posture and my clenched fists. "What's going on?" he asked. "Just helping Isabella understand how things work in this family," Margaret said smoothly. "Oh, and I've arranged for a stylist to pick a proper dress for her for the gala tomorrow." James hesitated but forced a smile. "That's thoughtful, Mom." He always tried to keep the peace, stuck between his love for me and his mother's disapproval. Later that night, as we drove home, he squeezed my hand. "She'll come around," he said. "She just needs time." But it had been 3 years, and nothing had changed. In fact, it had only gotten worse, especially after we told her we were trying for a baby. "A child needs a proper upbringing," she had said. "With the right values." She didn't think my values were good enough. The next morning, I was outside pushing Tommy on the swing while Margaret hosted her garden club. James was inside with his father. "Higher, Auntie Bella." Tommy giggled. Across the yard, I heard Margaret's voice. "It's a shame. James could have married Caroline Prescott. Instead, he brought home, well." I ignored her, focusing on Tommy's laughter. His love made Margaret's cruelty easier to bear. "Watch me jump," Tommy suddenly shouted. Before I could stop him, he leaped off the swing at its highest point. Time slowed. He was too high, too far. Without thinking, I lunged forward and caught him just before he hit the ground. We crashed down hard. Pain shot through my back, but I held him tight. As we rolled to a stop, I heard Margaret scream. "Someone call an ambulance." Tommy was crying but safe. I tried to move, but I couldn't. Everything hurt. The last thing I saw before everything went black was Margaret's face, filled not with anger, but something else. Fear? Worry? As I lost consciousness, I heard her whisper, "Hold on, Isabella. Please hold on." When I woke up, hospital machines beeped around me. James was holding my hand, his face pale with worry. "Bella," he whispered, "thank God." I tried to squeeze his hand, but nothing happened. I couldn't move. Fear filled me as I realized the truth. What I didn't know was that this moment, this sacrifice, would change everything, especially Margaret's heart. The first month after the accident was a blur of doctors, tests, and hard news. My spine was badly injured, and the doctors said I might never walk again. I might never hold my future children. I might never return to my classroom full of excited first graders. "You saved his life," the doctors told me about Tommy. "If you hadn't caught him, it didn't have to finish." I knew what could have happened. James stayed by my side, barely sleeping, fighting with insurance companies, searching for treatments. But I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of it all pressing down on him. Margaret came too, but she wasn't the same. She didn't make sharp comments or look at me with disapproval. She just sat there, watching, listening. One afternoon, as I struggled in therapy to pick up a small ball with my weak fingers, Margaret appeared in the doorway. She looked different, smaller, less sharp. "Tommy asks about you every day," she said, stepping inside. "He wanted me to give you this." She placed a crayon drawing in my lap, A stick figure labeled me standing next to another labeled my hero auntie. I stared at it, wishing I could hold it properly. How is he? Physically, he's fine. But he's having nightmares. He keeps saying he's sorry. My heart ached. It's not his fault. He's just a little boy. Margaret hesitated, her hands trembling. No, it wasn't his fault. She swallowed hard. I've been thinking about what you did. You didn't even hesitate. You just acted to save him. He's family, I said. Margaret flinched as if the word had struck her. She opened her mouth to say something more, but then James arrived with my lunch. Mom, he looked surprised. I didn't know you were coming today. I was just leaving, she said quickly, but at the door, she turned back. Isabella, thank you. For my grandson. It was the first time she had ever thanked me. After that, Margaret changed. She visited often, not just for a few minutes, but for hours. She watched my therapy, took notes, even scolded a nurse for being too rough. This is my daughter-in-law, she said sharply. Be more careful. Daughter-in-law, not just James's wife or that girl. The words meant something. One day, after a frustrating therapy session where I couldn't even hold a cup, Margaret did something I never expected. She pulled her chair close and took my hand, the one I couldn't feel. You know, she said softly, when James was little, he struggled to ride a bike. People told me to let him give up, but I knew he needed to keep trying. So every day we went outside. Every day he fell. And every day we got back up. She squeezed my hand. You're going to get back up, Isabella, and this time I'm going to help you. I looked at her, searching for the woman who had once thrown my gift away, but she wasn't there anymore. Why? I whispered. Why now? Margaret was quiet for a long time. Then she said, barely above a whisper, because I was wrong. I thought family had to look a certain way, but I was blind to what was right in front of me, someone who would sacrifice everything for one of us. Tears filled my eyes. I might never walk again. Then we'll face that together, she said. As a family. For the first time since the accident, I felt something other than fear. I felt hope. 6 months passed, marked by small victories and crushing setbacks. Against all odds, feelings started returning to my upper body, though my legs remained stubbornly unresponsive. Every tiny improvement felt like a miracle. The first time I could feed myself, hold a phone, hug Tommy when he visited. Margaret became my unexpected champion. She transformed her pristine garden room into a state-of-the-art rehabilitation space, hiring the best physical therapists in the country. The woman who once criticized my every move now celebrated each small triumph as if it were an Olympic achievement. Look what Isabella did today, she'd announce proudly to anyone who would listen, showing videos of me managing to brush my own hair or sign my name. The garden club ladies who once whispered behind their teacups now brought casseroles and offered encouragement. One afternoon, as I struggled with my exercises, Margaret sat beside me looking through old family albums. I found something, she said, turning the book toward me. There was a photo of a young woman in a wheelchair, smiling brightly despite obvious challenges. This was my grandmother. After polio, they said she'd never leave her bed. She proved them wrong. I stared at the photo, seeing the same determination in the woman's eyes that I felt in my heart. You never mentioned her before. No, Margaret admitted softly. I think I was ashamed of how our family treated her. How I treated you. She closed the album, meeting my eyes. But she never gave up, and neither will you. That conversation changed something fundamental between us. Margaret began sharing more family stories, not just the polished society tales she'd once prized, but the real human stories of struggle and resilience. She even asked about my own family's history, listening intently as I told her about my parents' journey from Mexico, their sacrifices, their strength. Then came the day that changed everything. I was working with my physical therapist when I felt it, the faintest twitch in my toe. At first, I thought I'd imagined it, but no, there it was again. Margaret. I called out, my voice shaking. Look. She rushed over, and together we watched as I managed to move my toe just slightly. It was tiny, barely noticeable, but it was movement. It was hope. Margaret burst into tears, pulling me into a careful hug. I knew it, she whispered. I knew you were stronger than anyone thought. The doctors called it a miracle. Slowly, painfully, I began regaining movement in my legs. Each step in my recovery was met with fierce determination and unwavering support from my newfound ally. The woman who once thought I wasn't good enough to join her family now proudly told everyone about her extraordinary daughter-in-law. 1 year after the accident, I stood, shakily but standing, in the Wilson family garden. The same garden where everything had changed. Tommy, now 5, held my hand while James supported me on the other side. "Ready for the family photo," Margaret called, setting up the camera. "But I'm still in braces," I said, gesturing to my leg supports. Margaret walked over and straightened my collar with gentle hands. "Yes, and they show exactly who you are. A fighter, a protector, a true Wilson." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "Now, let's show everyone what real family strength looks like." As we gathered for the photo, I realized something profound. The accident hadn't just changed my body, it had transformed our entire family. Margaret's perfectly manicured facade had cracked, revealing a deeper, more authentic love. My struggle had become our struggle, my victories our victories. Today, I still face challenges. Some days are harder than others. But now when I look in the mirror, I don't see someone who's not worthy. I see someone who proved her worth not through social status or traditions, but through unconditional love and sacrifice. And Margaret, she's the first to remind me of that. Every morning when she comes to help with my therapy, she greets me the same way. "Good morning, my brave, beautiful daughter." Sometimes the greatest healing isn't physical at all. Sometimes it's the healing of hearts that were broken long before any bones. And as for being worthy, well, as Margaret now likes to say, true worth isn't about where you come from or what you can do. It's about who you are when it matters most. I guess sometimes it takes losing the ability to stand to help someone else finally see you standing tall.